Good morning, everyone. This is the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee meeting for December 3rd, 2021. Thank you for coming. We do have a quorum. I just a few reminders, and I don't want to treat you like anyone like children, but just because some people are on Zoom and some people are in person, if we can just wait for everyone to have a chance to raise their hand, and so everyone can have the chance to speak, so it can be as clear as possible. I know it's hard when I can see the people in the room, but sometimes the people on Zoom I can't see as clearly, so please, be patient. It's not trying to favor anyone. So minutes from 11/19/21, I think, would we like to make a motion to table those for next meeting?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we hold off on approving the minutes until the next meeting, so a couple of revisions can be addressed.
And do we have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll get started with most of the focus of the meeting was to go over some of the Stockbridge Watershed Management Memorandum and maybe be able to, digest it and get it down into smaller pieces. But maybe what we'll do, because Mike Buffoni is here, would you like to talk about the water testing? Do you have?
I think I mentioned it on the last meeting that it's the water column was fully mixed. We took our 30+ samples, got them off to the labs, haven't seen any results yet, but everything was pretty much all mixed thoroughly. There was no, thermocline. Basically, it was all mixed good. So that's always the noticeable thing when we're doing the data collection. It's noticing where the thermocline is and seeing how high it comes up. And this summer was certainly the highest we've seen it since I've been doing it for 2 years, but so.
Okay. And is this the last water testing for the season?
Yeah, November was it, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions for Mike? Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing that we've got mixing and we don't have a bloom.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it sounds.
Any idea where the bugs are?
Well, without the testing, all the different samples, I wouldn't know. No, I have no idea.
You didn't do a Secchi disc or anything like that at the time?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did a Secchi, and it was actually, boy, I can't remember without looking at it. Looking at our we do a Secchi every time we go out.
So do you think that might be where they are? If you noticed anything happening?
No, I mean, the Secchi was, I want to say we didn't get down as far as usual, but as far as like turbidity spikes in the water column, it was a pretty consistent turbidity all the way down, if I remember correctly.
All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Mike Buffoni? Seeing none. All right, we will go on to the Stockbridge Watershed Management Memorandum. And it's my understanding that a part of this being compiled was that we would get to the point where we could have a living document, like a working lake management plan. As there's no emergency, but just that we would get to that point. And that there are separate issues of dredging, which is a big project that would most likely happen once. It wouldn't be an ongoing thing. And then the treatment of the lake, which is a different section. I don't see it going into this document, but again, I could be wrong. So to open up, I'm not sure how we want to open up. Some of it's history. Some of it is in the back are the tables, which are very helpful. So I am going to, Charlie, did you have any comments or anything that you want to say?
Well, I'd like to ask a question. the obviously, we're a commission, and I understand our function is going to be to put this together, what you've just been describing, as an advisement for the select board. And that we would take this and pass it on to the select board for the select board's approval and modification, whatever. So since we have a select board member on our commission, I'd like to ask Roxanne, what kind of format would you like us to actually put this together in so that we can present it as an advisement to the select board?
Well, we're not going to necessarily create this format. We've presented information to GCA in the past, and they have come back to us. And in those initial, if you remember, in the initial discussions about this, they were talking about putting it in a format that then brings all the information together in a manner and in a format that DEP approves of, and basically makes it much easier for the town, because everything is in this one document, to go after grant monies. So that actual final format is going to be controlled by GZA, and it's just up to us to approve it.
So would you suggest that we plan to put this together to give back to GZA and then have that eventually go to the select board that way? Or do you expect us to put something together to actually send straight to the select board?
No, I'm assuming that basically that our task right now really is to do a couple of pieces here. And that is to identify everything that we want to have included in the Lake and Watershed Management Plan, and to do prioritization and identification. So we have to prioritize, set our priorities, what we feel as the SBSC are the priorities to pursue projects, and also to identify any areas of interest that we think should be included in this plan that may not be there, such as hydrogeology of the watershed and how the water is being fed into Lake Mackinac. And also, the other thing that I focused on was hypolimnetic anoxia. And do we need to pursue addressing that issue as well?
Okay, so then I'm going to suggest that that what we do is this memorandum does have an extensive historical review as part of it, and I think we could make comments on that a little bit. But at the end of it, it has a very, I think, thorough, almost complete set of options that we have to recommend and consider. The last 3 pages of the document are really addressing the management areas and taking the strategies that the GC is recommending. So I'm inclined to suggest that we just go straight to that and look at it. And if we need to, refer back to the document and the historical stuff as we need to, and then see what we want to get out of it. And that's my suggestion. We go straight there.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I mean, the one thing we have to keep in mind is all these historical reports and surveys that have been done will be incorporated into this lake management plan. Those will be attachments or addenda, so to speak, to this plan, and reference to them obviously is part of this lake and watershed management plan.
One thing that when I read this, one thing that I noticed is that they talk about, historical, the amount of the milfoil that's in the lake. And when the harvester was run for the years that Mark ran it, there was harvester logs that were kept and they had to be turned in every year. I don't know if anybody ever got those log books and they have to still keep them now. But I have some of the data that Mark kept, but he gave all his log books to Lenny when he was highway superintendent.
Right.
That to me seems like a really good indicator on how the amount of weeds that were taken in, the tonnage a year, has it tapered off, has it grown, has it tapered off then plateaued. It seems like that data should be somehow, whoever's going to do this for us, GZA, they really need to have that information.
Right. I agree.
'Cause I mean, me
So-
personally, I've said it before, and I know Michael's lived on the lake a long time, Gary's been on the lake a long time. When we were kids running those harvesters, you didn't have to go very far to fill them up, and now you have to go around the lake all day trying to fill them up, so.
Right.
And I would love to see, and I don't know if it can be done, me personally, I would love to see the nutrient loading, if there's been it seems like there's historical data on that, and has that tapered off, which I would imagine it has to have with the sewering we've done around the lake, but there's nothing that I've seen that shows that, you know, in black and white, the tapering off of the nutrient loading.
Well, anything you have, you know, you can send, I would just distribute it to all of us, but that can be incorporated in. I know at some point, I don't know, probably a year and a half ago, I managed to get one document from Lenny, just one piece of that. And I can ask Hugh to like go through the files and search and see if we can find the additional years. Because I think that's an important point.
I have the harvester logs from 06, 07, 09, and 10.
Okay,
Pretty good. It's a good stretch of time.
Those are on my computer in Mark's file.
Okay.
Stuff that but they were actually, the actual books were all given to Lenny.
right.
Michael, do you have any of those?
Do I?
Yeah.
No, I was not privy to that information. So I don't have it. I know that Mark always talked about that it hasn't been done in the last few years. But it hasn't been done, I think, because of the nature of how we've been driving the harvester with not just volunteers, which have an educational process. There should be an educational process to anybody who drives a harvester about what they have to do or should do for the town. If we're town employees driving that thing, it was never presented to me in the last 2 years, and I'm not sure if it was presented before that. Before that, I think when Mark left, I'm not sure if it was kept up. So, Mark, you're saying you have the meetings till 2011. That's already 10 years ago.
Yeah, Mark has been with us for 8 years now at Waters and Sewers.
Wow. Yeah, so I think going forward, we really should be doing like you're saying, what Mark did, but he should give us all an education, or whoever does the harvester, on how they want it done.
I'm pretty sure it was a DCR or a DEP requirement. That's why
It is a requirement. And so for this year, that information is on the GPS unit so that we can download where we've been.
But not the quantity of weeds, though.
Yeah, right.
No,
That's a
it
different
was so
story.
limited this year that we're not even
Right.
talking full loads when they went out. So we're talking a handful of times. But in the future, yes. And in terms of education on the harvester, when I was talking to the company that manufactured the harvester, they do have available training programs. So they can come out here, or it can be done remotely. So that is something that'll be done in the future. And
That's good.
hopefully, this coming summer, we'll be able to hire enough staff so that we will have town employees who are going to be doing the harvesting. That's the plan, anyway.
I am a town employee.
Well, other than,
Highway.
residents, we're talking highway employees.
Wait, the town wants town employees to live in the town. I'm live in the town, and now, right. No, I'm a town employee.
We have a lot of employees who don't live in town, Michael.
No, I understand. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, let's keep going.
We digress. Anything else?
I think, Jamie, if I may make it. Oh, go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, I think Michael Buffoni's point about the harvesting records is a really interesting empirical basis to look at the trend in the weeds in the lake. That's very important, and it goes along, let's say, with the idea that you get out of the it's a little contrary to what you get out of the historical documents, but there is this change in the way the weeds go as time goes along, and it gives us. I think one of the things about nutrient loading that we should look at historically is the implementation of the sewer system in the lower part of the lake. That was very good and changed things around quite a bit. But in addition to that, I'd give a lot of credit to the SBA. If you look at their educational documents, the stuff that they send around to their people all the time, about how to manage their yards and do different things and stuff like that. I think they have had an effect that on the superficial nutrient loading over the years that I think is paying off in a lot of ways. And I would give the Stockbridge Bowl Association a lot of credit for that. I think that this idea of the weeds being perhaps not as an emergent problem, or let's say a cumulative trend that's out of control, allows us to start to focus on a second idea potentially as a more important immediate priority, which is the dredging, which the sediment buildup in the lake, and because as Roxanne pointed out, we have a set of things that we have to sort of put together that need to be approved by the NHESP as a sequential kind of an idea rather than doing everything all at once. I think that this, for me, is a statement that says that we ought to start to look beyond the weeds for the moment. We've got the harvesting in place. Hopefully that we can continue to do that and start to look at the dredging as one of the important ideas. Now, so anyway, that's my response to Mike Buffoni's statement about that. I think it's a very interesting observation.
Michael, Nathan, did you want to add something?
Well, I wanted to add, I mean, basically what Dr. Kinney said was correct. I think maybe what we should do is just here have what are the most important things that we want on this document in the short term. Long term, it's easier because it's not as imperative a thing to do. Or I don't know if I stated that right. But I think for the discussion maybe should be from now into the next 3 years. What are the things that we want to do, or what are the things that should be on this thing, and make an outline. I'm not sure in a committee like this, it's not easy to state all the things that we want to put in. But I think if we break it up into smaller sections of what do we want to see, let's just start off from 0 to 2 years from now, or 0 to 3, what would we like to change on the lake, or what would we like to accomplish, might be, and then GZA would put it in the format, as Roxanne said, that would go then to the select board. But we start with that and then go from 3 to 5 and discuss that, and 5 on, which is a little more cryptic, I think.
The one major thing that I'd like to see this document have is, okay, we're out doing the data collection, we're doing the sampling, and we're showing that the thermocline is coming up. We've got a really good high potential for a bloom. We need some kind of procedure, or is there a procedure? Can we do the peroxide? Can we drop peroxide pellets in the lake to oxidize and get that anaerobic? I mean, is there something that they can recommend? Do we go out and spray copper sulfate? Is there something that the town could approve, or is there a procedure, or we're just going to say, okay, yeah, we're looking like we're going to have a bloom, so everybody get ready for it and watch it, and the lake is unusable for another month or something in the middle of the summer. I would like to see, I mean, we're doing all this testing and data collection, which is great, but if we are going to have a bloom and it's August and the lake is still going to be used recreationally, let's have a procedure in place, or something, a recommendation of a procedure that we could try to combat it and not, have it happen.
I think probably we should have a conversation with GZA in terms of a procedure for, or at what point, what is the trigger for us going back to GZA to report specifically, we have this concern? What is that breaking point when then they can turn around and they can make a recommendation to us as to what we should do to try to combat the potential of a cyanobacterial bloom? So I think that we have to determine where is that trigger point.
Yeah.
Where's the danger zone? When are we entering the danger zone? Can they define that for us? And that could be implemented in here. And then we have a procedure that says, here's how we proceed from this point. If this happens, then we contact whoever at GZA and we get their response back, or we have them come in and we have a discussion about what our alternatives are. Because that may change over time.
Sure.
I think following Charlie's suggestion about going through this chart that's the last 3 pages might help us focus on each one of these areas and be able to then go through this and to some extent after looking at it, be able to prioritize all these various aspects of the watershed, the data collection, the littoral zone. So I think maybe if we just go through this systematically, maybe we'll get some good input and get some results in terms of prioritization at least. And I agree. I think there are items like that, Mike, that we need to definitely include.
Mike, I think your point about having an action plan in place is absolutely essential. It's a very practical thing that I don't think the document here actually focuses on that kind of reaction idea. But I think that Cortman and his group are really able to give us that pretty quickly. I think they'll put in place what they think, and I think that's an important aspect of it. As far as this, the 3 pages at the end are concerned, I would just, there are 3 different management areas that are brought up. First, there's the watershed. Then there's they looking at this as an organizational way to do things, plan to do things. So you have the management areas. The first one is the watershed. Then they have the water column. Then they have the lake littoral zone, and then they have the water column. And they give us various recommendations in each of these management areas. Now, in general, if you look at the watershed area, if you look at each one of them, you'll see over on the column on the right, they have the drawbacks, right? Every one of the recommendations for the watershed has either a limited impact or isn't going to do the whole trick. So that when you look at the advantages of it, you see that they're preventative, proactive, et cetera. It looks to me like with respect to the watershed, they're saying to us, we have to do everything they recommend if we want to have any kind of significant impact, because all by itself, any of these things are not going to do anything. That's my read on that. The second area, the littoral zone area, and this is an interesting aspect of all of their recommendations. The only recommendation that they say must occur, besides the testing that we're already doing, that kind of a thing, is that the outlet channel must be deepened. They say that right up in the top of the littoral zone management area. This is the one thing they say must be done besides ongoing testing. So that's my take on the littoral zone general area. The other stuff they have there, we can discuss it. And the water column treatment, I don't see anything in there that they begin to get more in the area of what Mike is talking about, in terms of preventative stuff. But and what Roxanne brought up about improving the oxygen content at the bottom of the lake and things like that. So my take on this in general is that the one thing they recommend that must be done is the dredging. I'm just going to say that.
Right. Well, I mean, in here, they're giving us the advantages and the drawbacks, the advantages and the disadvantages of every single one of these items. And I'm sure that they're doing that because they want us to weigh in. This is something for us to take under consideration. And like Charlie said, the one thing that stuck out to me also was that one comment on late, this is in relationship to the drawdown, but the outlet channel must be deepened. So clearly, they see that as a problem as we do. And when we go through a prioritization, I think we have a couple of two different areas. One is basically in terms of maintenance, i.e. we continue doing the water testing. That's kind of essential so that we have the data. That's a maintenance issue. That's something that we have to do in an ongoing way. And then we're going to also have a column where what is our prioritization and where do we want to act? What are our action items? And one of those action items is obviously the SBA herbicide project has got to be here and considered. And the other one is going to be the dredging. That's the other big one. And I think we've had this discussion and we actually took a vote one time where we said, we think the dredging is a very high priority item. So I think we have kind of two areas here where there's the maintenance and what we should be doing on an ongoing basis to monitor the lake. And then what are the action items and what's the priority of those action items that we can pursue? So I think we kind of have to focus on that. Charlie?
Roxanne, would you consider, like I do, that the, harvesting is a maintenance idea? It just needs to be done on a regular basis, and it's an established way to knock down the weed problem considerably.
I think it is for us. I don't know if DEP and NHESP are going to see it that way. NHESP, Michael, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I got the impression that they just see that as another action item. Michael?
Yeah,
Michael,
I'm listening to you. I agree with you. They see, unless they just bring it up to give us a hard time, but they bring it up. We've been doing this for 40 years, and there's been they don't look at that. They just bring this up as another thing, one of three things that might be ongoing at the same time, and they're concerned. So Roxanne is right. They don't look at it the same way we do, or at least they say they don't.
Right. I mean, I think we're fairly safe if we include it in here as a maintenance item, because that's how we see it. This is an ongoing issue for specific areas of the lake, but that we have verbiage and some kind of disclaimer in there that we recognize that that is very much controlled by what other projects are ongoing and whether or not there's a conflict. And so I think if we're real clear on that the intention is we do not want to impede any particular ongoing project that might come up. It becomes a conflict, that we would be able to modify or maybe halt the weed harvesting based on those circumstances. I think that's what's important to them, actually. Because when we were talking to them and we talked about, obviously, we are going to avoid, test and control areas. We will abide by any kind of decision that's made by DEP or NHESP about conflict. They seem to appreciate that. They understood that.
I have about 20 years of underwater videoing that I've taken over for a long time now. These are sitting on my desk at home. If I gave them to GZA, they might get a better picture of what's going on. We're concerned between 15 feet and about 5 feet. That's where the weed growth is. And I've seen major changes there because of drawdown and continual dredging. But one of the big things with dredging is that it takes out tons and tons of biomass that would be next year's fertilizer. So, I mean, it's a major contributor.
Right. I think that's really valuable information. I think that should be shared.
I'll put all of the video stuff together, and I'll give you a map of the transects. Where some of the transects that I did were in the test areas.
Okay.
So that might be helpful.
Oh, that would be great.
Gary, could we see some of that as a commission? Could you show us?
I'll bring a box of Dramamine because Ken Wagner told me he got seasick watching the first one.
Yeah, I've seen some of it.
Yeah.
I think you can get an idea pretty quickly.
It's not very exciting.
The other maintenance thing we've been doing is the zebra mussel station, which has really been helpful to keep a monitor because we have increased boat use and.
Is there anything else you'd like us to do over there? That might be is there anything else that we can do? Like we could keep the records for how much weeds are taken out of the lake because they're always right there. I mean, it's a good place to keep things so they won't get lost.
Over at the zebra mussel station?
Yeah, in the shed.
Oh, okay.
And
Well, and I also think we need to have digital copies of all this stuff on the town computer.
yep.
Yeah, so it's available for the future people coming in.
I've got somebody who would be willing to input it. I mean, we pay her, but
Okay, well, we may be able to scan it in.
okay.
I mean, we have scanning capabilities and a lot of stuff we scan in.
I think that's a good idea, Gary. I think the more data we have going forward, a lot of this data we don't necessarily see as being immediately relevant to anything we're doing But later on, we see, gee, I wish we had this data, so that we could understand the trend. And that's where the data becomes very interesting, is when you see it over a period of time and you put it together with the ideas you're working with.
Now, do we do any monitoring at the lake beach, the public beach in the summer? Like how many cars, how many people, like?
I don't know.
Have to talk to Parks and Rec on that.
We have to ask Parks and Rec, but I don't think so.
It just if that would be helpful, because there are the racks there and people do put their kayaks and water, paddle boards in, if that would be any helpful information.
Well, we can see. I mean, certainly it would be nice to know
And the geese.
and also just the usage,
Right.
just how many people are we having come in and out every day at the beach, as well as the boat ramp, because we have that at the boat.
Lifeguards could take care of that when they're working. They don't work 5-7 days a week, I don't think.
No,
No.
this year we had trouble just getting one, so it's tough.
So could we add that to what our plan is going to be, is that we start to take data such as Mike Buffoni brought forward about the, looking what the harvester was doing, what Gary's talking about, and looking at other data in addition to doing the water testing and things like that, but actually starting to accumulate a database on the lake and it maybe inquire of other lakes. I'll do a little homework on that myself to see what kinds of data retrospectively for various lakes seems to have been useful for them, so that we can go forward as that, and that could be part of our plan, is to figure out what kinds of data we ought to be looking at as we go along. We may find there's some interesting things that we can figure out as a result of having accumulated the data.
I think we're ahead of all the other lakes in the area.
I do too.
We talked with the Noda and Pontusic, and they're 10 years behind us.
I think, yeah, I agree.
But so in terms of priority actions, I mean, are we pretty much in agreement that dredging is a high priority item?
Yes.
Okay, because if that's the case, then that also becomes a maintenance issue that goes into the maintenance column as well, because even though you dredge, you have to maintain. And so then the other thing I think that needs to be addressed, and Charlie and I have talked a little bit about this in terms of recruiting students, graduate students, to come in and do some surveys or studies. And there's a couple of ways to address this. It looks like in these sheets that they're identifying that a great amount of this silt is coming from the Lily Pond the holding area there. So taking a look at that, and do we have to take some action there, and what kinds of actions would be allowed to mitigate more silt coming into the lake? And the other thing is the stupid pipeline. And I've thought about, could we get engineering students out here to take a look at, is there any way that we can, is there some other solution to that, getting around that impediment?
We have a diversion pipe in there right now.
Oh.
And it's partially, I have closed on the north end, it's open on the south end. But I'm wondering if we had somebody take a look at that, maybe we could get a better water flow through there by opening the diversion pipe up completely.
Right. So that's the kind of thing I'm getting at. It's like, let's bring in some engineers, and I think we could get engineering students in, maybe from UMass or SUNY or somewhere in striking distance, to come in and take a look. And, it could be for free, which is the bonus of that.
I think keeping it in keeping with what you said before, Roxanne, about making whatever we do, let's say, look right to the NHESP. I think we would have to put a very, very strict kind of oversight into using the diversion pipe, so we don't overdo it. You know what I mean? We don't want to turn it into a drawdown and have them not be happy about it, even accidentally.
The diversion pipe has nothing to do with the drawdown. It's the dam that has the drawdown. So the diversion pipe would be kind of neutral, but I'm thinking it might shift the water flow from up on top to down on the bottom. I think a hydrologist would have to give us some information on that.
Right.
All right, well, Gary, maybe I misunderstand. If, for example, the diversion pipe were used in such a way that we didn't monitor how much water was going through it at all, or change at all what was going on and just left it open all the time, could that let the lake go down to a drawdown level?
No,
Okay, all right, good. And we don't have to worry about it.
no.
Gary,
Yeah.
the diversion pipe is really under the ground.
Yeah, it's about 12 feet down.
Yeah,
12
so the water level, it shouldn't make any
No.
difference, like you say. But what I'm trying to get to, what it might do, but as you say, an engineer, it might just send the silt from north of the pipe to south of the pipe.
Right. Yeah, the diversion pipe was put
You
in.
know, we would have to figure out a way to get then that pond, to get it out from the pond. And it's interesting because when we built the diversion pipe, they put a pump to take the silt or to take everything out. And one of the things the engineers, it would be, I think what Roxanne's idea of going to engineering students is just really a great idea, is maybe for a month or so in the fall or water, I'll be allowed to pump a certain amount out every year to keep the level of silt at an equilibrium or at a certain level. And it wouldn't be any different than than the stream would get normally if there was no buildup of sediment.
It would just change where the water is going, where the water's coming from. The diversion pipe will take it from about 5.5 feet down, where the surface, the water goes across the gas pipeline. It's about like 2 feet, 8 inches deep there in the summertime. And then seeing we don't do drawdown, that's going to stay. But if we let the diversion pipe draw off from a deeper depth, that might have some bearing. I don't know. It's
Right. Might also help the anoxia problem.
good.
When we do the sampling in the tributaries, we have a velocity, a flow meter that we put in the water column, and the water up on the top is always the fastest.
Okay. Well,
And
Could someone explain to me where the diversion pipe starts and where it ends up? Just so I understand it better.
you know where, when's the last time you were down the channel? You went down with me last year, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a
During the
buoy.
summer, during the summer.
There's a buoy about maybe 50 feet in front of where the sewer pipe goes across. It goes diagonally across the channel from where the gas pipelines are. But the pipe goes down there, straight down about, I guess it's 8 to 10 feet below the top of the caisson, which is 5.5 feet below the water the surface of the water. And then it just takes a hard turn and it goes due south and it comes out about maybe 50 feet below where the gas pipeline is. And it's a 42-inch diameter pipe.
And if it's 5.5 feet down from the depth, if it, let's say the water were to go out, if it could go out at all the time, that wouldn't let the water level go down to the 5.5 foot top of that pipe?
No, because the dam, which is like a quarter of a mile down, is what controls how much water leaves the lake. This would just control was it going on the top or was it going down on a lower level?
So where it comes back into the lake is before the dam?
Yes.
I got it. Okay, now I got it. I thought it was on the other side of the dam. Fine, I got it.
Gary, I have a question. So is there any, and this might be a silly question, is there any kind of filter that prevents some of the silt coming from the top to the bottom? And when it makes that hard turn, does it get all the material get stuck there? And I'm just curious, I'm not criticizing, I'm just wondering, and then when does it anyway push against the gas pipes when the water's coming down?
No, it's way underneath.
It is, it's below them.
But we were always concerned with the silt buildup down in the bottom of the pipe.
That turn.
And we were told that once the water level reached down 2.5 feet during drawdown, the water would start to go through the pipe and it would just carry all that silt out.
It would be a scouring velocity.
Yeah, it would just scour.
Okay.
But I'm afraid, we're not using the pipe for anything else now. We might try it. If it does clog up, nothing gained, nothing lost.
Okay.
But if it does, yes.
Let me just say one thing. I think the pipe, what Jamie says is a very, very good point. I think it was meant when we go down 5.5 feet that would flush the silt out. I wonder if 2.5 feet is enough to flush that silt out if we do, but you know, an engineer, we're going off track here, but an engineer would tell us whether we might need to pump it out or whatever.
Again, I don't think there's going to be a lot of flow down in the diversion pipe because the water is going to naturally go on the top. I don't know what force is going to make it go down. We might have to put a pump in there, you know, to push the water through. I don't know. We need to have some experts take a look at it because the use is changed completely. You know, before we were planning to draw the lake down to where the water would not go over the gas pipeline, but it would be diverted down into the pipe. That's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, it's a different
whole different
mechanism now.
Yeah. That's why we've kept it capped. You know, what we should be doing is listing, we know what we want to do in the end. We know what the end result is going to be. We should be listing the things like, you know, dredging.
Right, this is what I agree.
List the main topics that we want to have this fulfill. And then let's work backwards through it to support it.
Right.
And we should also at the same time look at things, you know, I don't have it on my sheet here, it was cut off, the disadvantages of some of the things that we'll be doing and try to minimize those.
Right, right. So, okay, we've got dredging. We have aquatic plant control, which is also a biggie,
Harvesting
right?
and through
Chemicals.
chemicals.
Yeah, we can't just do away with the herbicide application that exists as a project as long as it's pursued or it's allowed. I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, it's kind of up in the air, I think.
It is.
So we've got dredging, aquatic plant control, cyanobacteria bloom prevention.
Right, or
Yeah.
would that would go under water testing, wouldn't it?
Well,
Michael,
just identifying the items that we know are concerns at this point. I mean, these are the kinds of things that we know we have to address. So anything else that we have to address?
Yes, I would say habitat protection.
Yep.
Yeah. That's going to be part of everything.
That'll be forced on us, which is good.
Well,
Good thing, yeah.
overlook it, we know.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Mussels is another one.
Well, it's invasives,
Well,
like,
that's, yeah, I think as a general category would be prevention of or elimination of invasive species.
Can't eliminate it, we just prevent it.
Can't eliminate, we can just limit, limitation
and,
of invasives.
And I think the over bottom anoxia is a big thing because
I do too.
it gives us that phosphorus shot. And, you know, on that same level, we have any kind of loading that we, around the, around the lake or whatever, any kind of nutrient loading.
Yeah, although at this point, I mean, the nutrient loading is mostly internal loading.
Yep.
You know, we've already mitigated that to a great extent.
Yep.
The biggest problem right now is the internal loading. So I think the anoxia is very important too.
and I don't know if this applies, but it would be great to have the sewer system all the way around the lake, just to keep everything really clean and protected.
Well,
But,
yeah.
yeah,
One of the studies we did a long time ago, this would have been in the 90s or the early, the turn of the century, was to where the nutrient was coming from. And we put test borings into the ground and we check them after each rainstorm. We found that a lot of the phosphorus loading came from pine trees, natural. And that we could not control unless we want to cut the pine trees down, and that's going to be an impossible
Yeah.
project.
Right. And I think, I don't know how to apply this, but like hydrogeologists have a better understanding of where the water is coming through and into the lake, because that's also going to help us determine, do we have phosphorus loading that's, say, coming from Highland Farms?
well,
That's a
what Jenny-
possibility, and Charlie's talked about that before.
That we could find out pretty quick, couldn't we? Could we do some testing in the cove on the east side of the causeway?
Well, we test Lily Brook. I mean, that's where we get our
That's
samples.
basically where it's coming from. And if
I don't
some of
think
it
they're
comes
showing-
off the
I don't
farm
think they're
too.
showing, I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot of data, but I don't think there's any alarming amounts of phosphorus coming in anywhere
Right.
from.
Well, I would just like to say one thing about that. If you look at Ludlam's study, that's the 1971 study. What he remarked about, which was interesting and sort of supports the idea that there could be, if you have an underground source, an underwater source, it could be confused with sediment originating phosphorus. In other words, it might be confused as or thought of as an internal loading. But what Ludlam brought out was first of all that the calcium magnesium ratio of the lake was a very special kind of, made it a special kind of hard water lake, and it reflected the dolomitic marble bedrock. And then he went forward and he discussed in it the concentration of calcium during the wintertime when the lake had inverted and there wasn't much communication between the deeper lake and the top part of the lake. And his observation was that there was it could be that the calcium in the deeper layers at that point was coming just from the sediment. But what he proposed was there might be another source. Now, this is the idea is if you have a large stream coming through the bedrock underneath, coming out into the lake, it potentially is a source of nutrients that we don't know about and that would be thought of as coming simply from the sediment. Now, the other part of this is that the lake is a hard water lake. And the sediment really, if we don't have a study of the sediment that speaks to this directly, although Ludlam referred to this, the sediment doesn't have that much calcium in it. And the water coming in on the surface doesn't have that much calcium in it. Then with the lake, why is the lake still hard? And if you look at the fens, the calciferous fens that we have around here, the calciferous fen is defined by a water body that has primarily a source from underneath. And so we know that the fen that we have in town has that kind of source already. We already know that that's how they exist. That's where they come from. And so the contribution potentially of this kind of underwater system to the lake that could be confused as internal loading is the kind of thing that a hydrogeological survey would uncover.
And
Right.
Charlie, and to your point on page 11, 58% of the lake's watershed come from Lily Brook and the Marsh Brook subbasins.
Right.
And it's Marsh Brook and Lily Brook were named the main potential sources of sediment. And so that would be, I think that what you're, helps what you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I'm talking about underwater.
Right, but
Sources, I mean, I get what Charlie's saying, and this to me kind of falls under prevention in terms of having a hydrogeologist come and take a look and try to identify where through the bedrock is the water traveling and getting into the lake. And if we can identify those locations, then as a preventative measure, you've identified an area where you think it's originating and it's coming into the lake ultimately, then preventatively, you can keep certain things from happening in those pieces of property. In other words, do we want to have more dairy cattle sitting on top of an area that may be ultimately feeding underground through the dolomitic bedrock into the lake? So I think it makes sense to understand what those sources are and what the flow might be.
But why is the lake hard? Why is it a hard water lake? Where does that come from?
Limestone.
If you go on NOAA's website, and you look at the fishermen use the charts all the time for tuna and whatnot, and you can see the aerial thermal imagery of the water temperatures in the ocean. I wonder if there's any kind of thermal imagery they could do and see if there's certain cold spots or cooler spots in our lake.
That's a very good idea. That's a very good idea.
If there's any colder areas in that water, because I know, I mean, whenever you're swimming in a lake or skiing or water skiing or whatever, you always like, wow, there's a cold spot, or, you know,
Yeah.
you always, and I know in Lake Averitt, when we would have the ice fishing derby, there's like 6 areas out there when there was a really high level of groundwater that we had to worry about, and for springs coming up in our water supply. When we used to have the ice fishing derby.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's something to ask. I mean, GZA, they might have something that they can recommend for thermal imaging or something. I don't know.
Right.
I'd like like to make another suggestion, that we have a category that would be emergency response plans. So for example, like Mike talked about, what do we do if we get a bloom? What do we do if we have a drought? What do we do if we have too much, a whole huge amount of water and the dam breaks? I mean, I don't know what the different possibilities could be, but because they did, I don't know when the berm was looked at last. That was supposedly weakened, in a weak state, at least according to one of the historical documents that I remember. Does anybody know when that was rechecked?
That was, well, the dam inspections are done through the state every 5 years, I believe. And the dam was all, the dike and the outlet and the cove was all redone.
96,
Yeah,
95.
With,
20 years ago,
25 years
15
ago.
years ago or something, 20 years ago.
but I think something's been addressed since I came into office, when Mark Weber was here.
I know they had to get up there with the mower because any trees growing near it puts roots into the, when a tree dies, it makes a
Right.
water path. So they have been taking the mower up there and maintaining the mowing on a regular basis, annually at least.
Now, when we're talking about the berm, we're talking about specifically which area?
I'm talking about between the spillway and the outlet gate. They redid that whole berm area
Okay.
in the cove years ago, 20 years ago.
Okay.
But it seems like it was only 15, but we know how time flies.
Yeah. And just incidentally, in terms of the dredging project, I mean, that's obviously a concern in terms of protecting the dam. So any dredging that would happen that would go up into the cove, obviously they take into account the safety of the dam.
And that's actually the deepest spot of the cove, is right in front of it.
Right.
It's one of the deepest spots.
Yeah. So the dredging conceivably is going to be farther away from the dam, further over to the opposite side.
So anyway, I'm just thinking, that we ought to at least think about what potential calamities we might have that we have to respond to, and we'd like to eventually get action plans in place to respond to those calamities.
Okay. I think that's excellent. So I could say emergency response action plan / procedures. Which what Mike talked about before, about, looks like things are,
Yeah.
the cyanobacteria is coming up and we're concerned. What's the trigger point? Identifying what the trigger points are for each one of these emergencies, and then what the action plan and the response would be.
Would be to get it.
Is it even preventable? Or we just gotta sit back and watch, And is there a procedure, if there is a procedure, we can try to combat it? I'm sure it'll have to go through a whole host of stuff to get approved by DEP, and, they need some lead time but.
Well, there's a possibility of doing an RDA, right? Maybe.
We would need conservation, DEP, the heritage.
We'd have to see what DEP or GZA says anyway, if there's even a possibility, so.
Right,
We get-
exactly. But exactly what that procedure is and what kind of permitting you'd need and all that should be defined.
Take years. That's a long-term look.
I think what Mike was saying and Charlie was saying is really very insightful in terms of just showing NHESP and DEP the depth of which we look at the lake and how we look at the lake, even if we have to go through the process. But I think a lot of this is written like Roxanne said, in order to get permitting for whatever it is we wish to get in the future. So I think it really adds to the plan. And it should definitely be put in there. Yeah, Charlie, thank you for,
Well, it's Mike's idea, I think. I mean, just
Yeah, well,
generalization of his
yeah,
idea.
but, right, no, definitely. You elaborated, you made it, you extended it.
Okay, so what I've got in my notes so far is, so we have a maintenance category, we have a priority items category, we have a prevention category, and we have an emergency response category. Anybody think of anything else?
Can you repeat the first thing you said, Roxanne?
Maintenance.
Maintenance,
Maintenance is basically
harvest.
harvesting,
Water
dredging, all that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Water testing.
yeah, the data collection, the monitoring. But, so, I mean, what I can do is I can put together some kind of a chart and try to organize my notes, and everybody else can, also come up with some kind of a structure for all of this, and then maybe the next time we can go through it and try to finalize some of these points in terms of especially the priority items, because we have a number of those. There's dredging, aquatic plants, control, cyanobacteria bloom, habitat protection, limitation of invasives, addressing the anoxia problem, sewer expansion. So there's a bunch of items that we could then, once we get this a little more organized in terms of how we're thinking, then I think we can actually go through and we can, just prioritize them one through whatever. And we might have a couple of items that have the same priority for us. But
Within the priorities, we should, whether it's a short-term, medium, or long-term also,
exactly,
for all.
right,
Right,
right.
good point. All right, any other questions, comments? Seeing none. Our next meeting would be January 21st because of the holidays. And if we went with a plan of every third, we were gonna go on the third Friday. We can always change it, but we'll just have that as sort of what to look forward to, and that gives Roxanne time to, does that sound reasonable? Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. And
So,
all in favor?
all right,
All right, happy holidays.
okay.
Well.